What if the first humans were aware of the consequences of their actions even before they took that fateful bite? That's a profound deviation from the canonical texts where their knowledge only comes after eating the forbidden fruit. In traditional teachings, this moment is crucial. It represents the awakening to sin and knowledge simultaneously. Exactly. And here's where the controversy ignites. If Adam and Eve were aware of their disobedience beforehand, as this text suggests, it fundamentally changes our understanding of original sin. It's no longer a naive mistake, but a premeditated challenge to divine authority. This portrayal could lead believers to view the foundation of human sinfulness through a radically different lens, and that's precisely the danger. Such ideas threaten to unravel the fabric of our faith, built on human fallibility and the need for divine salvation. If the inception of sin is premeditated, it disrupts the entire narrative of redemption and grace that follows throughout the Bible. But isn't that exactly why we need to explore these texts? To challenge and possibly strengthen our faith. If Adam and Eve's story, as told in the Apocalypse of Moses, is indeed true, it doesn't just add complexity to their characters. It forces us to reevaluate the very nature of free will and divine justice. While reevaluation can be beneficial, the risks here are immense. Introducing such fundamentally different ideas from what millions have believed for centuries could lead to disillusionment or even loss of faith. Is it responsible to expose the faithful to such destabilizing concepts? But who are we to decide what the faithful can handle? If this text was once part of the broader tapestry of Christian thought, perhaps it was meant to be wrestled with, to be debated and understood, not silenced and hidden. The line between guiding and hiding is thin, but in this case, the ban serves as a safeguard, protecting the core teachings that have guided countless souls to spiritual salvation. Or it could be seen as a barrier to a deeper, perhaps more authentic understanding of our beginnings. This isn't just about preserving faith. It's about confronting the truths that might just redefine it. This text presents a narrative where God's actions and decisions are open to question, something that's almost unheard of in the traditional biblical context. In the canonical scriptures, God is the epitome of omnipotence and wisdom. Any depiction that suggests fallibility could undermine the very essence of God as an infallible deity. But consider what this brings to the table. The text doesn't just challenge, it enriches our understanding by presenting a more approachable, more comprehensible divine entity. Isn't the concept of a God who can be questioned, who might even learn and adapt, more relatable to us as humans? Relatable perhaps, but at what cost? The theological implications are enormous. If God is fallible, what does that say about the directives issued, the punishments meted out, and the promises made in the scriptures? The very foundation of faith could be called into question. It's about depth. These narratives push the faithful to think beyond the simplistic views of good versus evil, right versus wrong. They invite believers to engage in a deeper, more philosophical dialogue about the nature of divinity itself. Yet, this could lead to chaos in theological circles. Faith, by its nature, often relies on the unassailable nature of the divine. By introducing the idea of a fallible God, aren't we risking the integrity of the belief system that holds communities together? Perhaps what we're really risking is complacency. The Book of Adam and Eve doesn't just challenge the concept of divine infallibility, it dares us to evolve our thinking. To question is not to deny, it's to strive for a deeper connection and understanding. But theology is not the only concern here. What about the moral and ethical implications? If God can err, what does that mean for divine justice, for the concept of sin, and for the redemption offered through Christ? These are exactly the kinds of questions that the Book of Adam and Eve raises, and why it's so vital to explore them. It's not about undermining faith. It's about approaching our spirituality with eyes wide open, ready to question and ready to grow. Unlike the sparse details in canonical texts, this book provides a vivid, nuanced portrayal of the angels who fell, painting them not just as rebels, but as complex characters with motivations and emotions. This is where things get particularly tricky. The traditional narrative paints these fallen angels as purely malevolent, leaving no room for sympathy. By offering a more empathetic view, the text could be seen as legitimizing their rebellion, suggesting there might be validity to their dissent against divine command. Exactly, and isn't that fascinating? By humanizing these angels, the text challenges us to consider the nature of rebellion itself. Is it always born of evil, or can it stem from genuine grievances, from a clash of ideals or visions for what is right? While that's an intriguing notion, it's also dangerously subversive. If we start sympathizing with the rebels of heaven, what does that mean for our perception of authority and obedience here on earth? The implications could extend far beyond theology into the very fabric of societal structure. But that's the beauty of these ancient texts. They provoke thought, they challenge the status quo. By exploring these forbidden narratives, we get a chance to understand the broader spectrum of moral and ethical dilemmas. I see your point, but we must tread carefully. These narratives were likely excluded from the canon, not just for their controversial content, but also for the potential chaos they could unleash. There's a reason certain stories remain on the fringes of our sacred texts. Or perhaps those reasons are exactly why we need to bring them into the light. Ignoring parts of our history, even the uncomfortable bits, doesn't change their existence. It only limits our understanding. Understanding is essential, yes, but so is maintaining a coherent narrative that supports faith and order. The risk of glorifying dissent, especially divine dissent, could lead to a fracturing of belief systems that have held firm for millennia. Then let's not shy away from the challenge. It's time we look these complex narratives in the eye and asked ourselves, what can they teach us about forgiveness, about justice, and about the very nature of conflict between good and evil? The humanization of Adam and Eve themselves. Far from being mere archetypes of human transgression, this text portrays them as deeply emotional, complex individuals, grappling with their reality outside Eden. This humanization indeed makes them more relatable, but also raises serious theological concerns. By depicting them as questioning, and even blaming each other and their circumstances, the text might encourage a similar questioning attitude among believers today. That's exactly the point. By showing Adam and Eve in such a human light, dealing with despair, making mistakes, and navigating their punishments, the text invites us to rethink the nature of sin and forgiveness. It's about empathy, understanding that these were not just figures of disobedience, but real beings facing real consequences. While empathy is valuable, there's a risk that this portrayal undermines the gravity of their disobedience as depicted in Genesis. If we start to see their actions as understandable or justifiable, does it not diminish the significance of their sin and, by extension, the necessity for divine salvation? Or perhaps it enhances it. By fully understanding their humanity, we can better appreciate the magnitude of God's mercy and the depth of the redemption offered. The story becomes one of true grace, not just a punitive measure. But we must be cautious not to reinterpret these foundational stories to the point where they lose their original intent and power. The narrative of Adam and Eve serves as a cornerstone for the Christian understanding of the human condition and our need for redemption. And yet, challenging and expanding our understanding of these stories can lead to a richer, more robust faith. Isn't part of our spiritual journey to wrestle with these texts, to find personal meaning and connection in them? True, but there's a fine line between personal interpretation and doctrinal integrity. The Church's role has historically been to guide that interpretation to ensure it remains within the bounds of sound doctrine. Which brings us back to our ongoing debate. Preservation versus suppression. Guidance versus control. By exploring texts like the Book of Adam and Eve, we confront not just the stories themselves, but how we allow those stories to shape our faith. The revelation of secret knowledge and hidden teachings. This text not only discusses the hardships Adam and Eve faced, but also unfolds esoteric wisdom that was supposedly imparted to them after their fall. wisdom that is not mentioned in the canonical Bible. This introduction of secret teachings is precisely what makes this book so controversial. It suggests that there was a deeper, perhaps more mystical layer of understanding granted to Adam and Eve, knowledge that the general faithful were not privy to. This kind of elitism can be dangerous, but could it also not be enlightening? Imagine the depth it adds to our understanding of divine communication. If Adam and Eve received profound insights into the nature of their existence and the cosmos, it challenges us to think about the potential knowledge that was considered too profound, too powerful for the masses. And that's exactly the problem. By suggesting that certain truths are only suitable for a select few, we risk creating divisions within the faithful. The idea that some are more worthy of divine secrets than others goes against the very democratic nature of Christian teaching, where salvation and knowledge are supposed to be available to all. Yet, isn't the quest for deeper understanding a core part of many spiritual journeys? This text might invite us to seek out and cherish deeper truths, urging us to not be complacent with surface-level understandings. While seeking deeper understanding is commendable, we must also consider the implications of what it means when forbidden knowledge enters the public domain. There's a reason such teachings were kept secret, if they even existed. The potential for misinterpretation and misuse is high, true, but the suppression of knowledge can also be seen as a form of control, a way to maintain power by keeping the laity in a state of dependency and ignorance. Isn't it possible that by exploring these hidden teachings, we could actually be liberating our faith from centuries-old shackles? Liberation or not, we have to weigh the risks. Revealing and embracing content that was historically deemed heretical or too esoteric might destabilize not just individual beliefs, but entire communities. Perhaps, but if our faith is strong, it should withstand inquiry and embrace complexity. If this hidden knowledge has the power to enhance our understanding of the divine and our place within it, then maybe it's worth the risk. Now, let's pivot to another significant aspect of the Book of Adam and Eve that stirs controversy. Its nuanced exploration of the concept of original sin. This text reinterprets the very foundations of what many believe to be the root of human morality and sin. Indeed, by suggesting different motives and a deeper awareness in Adam and Eve before their disobedience, this book challenges the traditional understanding of original sin as a straightforward transgression resulting from naivete and deception. Exactly. The implications are profound. If Adam and Eve were aware of their actions and the consequences beforehand, as the text suggests, it shifts the narrative from one of simple disobedience to a complex decision with full awareness. This could radically change how we view sin and human responsibility, and that's a dangerous territory. The concept of original sin is not just a theological point, it underpins the Christian doctrine of salvation. Altering this could undermine the entire narrative of human need for redemption through Christ's sacrifice. But could it not also enhance our understanding of free will? If Adam and Eve made a conscious choice, fully aware of the consequences, it speaks to the power and responsibility of human agency. This could lead to a more empowered view of human actions and their consequences. While that might be appealing philosophically, it complicates the straightforward message of redemption that has comforted and guided billions of believers. The simplicity of needing salvation because of a clear-cut fall serves a vital spiritual purpose. I understand the need for clarity, but shouldn't we also strive for a true understanding of our scriptures? If there's more to learn from Adam and Eve's story, more depth and complexity, it could potentially lead to a richer, more meaningful faith. The risk, though, is in the fragmentation of core beliefs. By introducing ambiguity into the story of the fall, we risk creating multiple interpretations that could fragment the church into sects, each with its own version of these fundamental events. It's a valid concern. However, the pursuit of truth and the willingness to confront complex questions could also bring about a stronger, more intellectually robust community of believers who aren't afraid to explore the nuances of their faith.